Welcome! You're listening to Making Relationships Work. We're a company focused on women and their marriage. We lead and teach women just like you how to grow into and access, whenever you need to, your wise woman's self. The part of you who is deeply connected to your purpose, your innate wisdom, and your husband and family. We teach women in marriages how to rebuild trust and connection, to work through conflicts, no matter how deep, no matter how painful, and to lead your marriage to a place where the two of you experience marriage mastery. This podcast is about learning the systems and techniques that truly work to reconnect you back into your marriage so that you can experience the freedom that comes with a masterful marriage. Since this podcast is totally free, if you're getting tons of value and you want to support us and make sure that you get more of this good stuff, subscribe below and rate and review our podcast today. Now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Hello, Women Making Marriages Work. Hello, Making Relationships Work podcast and YouTube. I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. I want to talk to you about something really important, as all of the things I talk to you about are. Tonight is about how do you know whether you're in a relationship with a disaster kind of space, or are you in a relationship that you would call a masterful space? And the disaster master paradigm is a really important one because most of us live in one end or the other consistently. So if we think about this as a line where this is disaster and this is master, so it's kind of a line between those two hands, I want you to think about it. And if you put a line right in the middle, that tends to be the decision point about which end you're going to live at. And most couples who are functioning beautifully, who are well connected, who are deeply in love with this sense of us against the world, live in that masterful space most of the time. Couples that are disconnected, where there's betrayals, addictions, regular outbursts of criticism or blaming or resentment, or a sense of in it for themselves or protecting their own space, live in the disaster area and don't really visit the masterful space very often. And so tonight I'm going to start to pull these out in more detail so you can get a sense of where is my marriage if I was to evaluate it? Where do I fit in our marriage, and where do I want my marriage to be? And so let's talk about this line. We'll put it at disaster at one end, master up the other. And just with those brief discussions we've already had, have a think about where you would put yourself. Don't put yourself in the middle, because the middle is no man's land. Put yourself on one end or the other, okay? Now, the other thing I want you to do is to convince, no, let's not do that particular version. I want you to assess how much of a week do you spend in wherever you've assessed yourself to be, in the disaster end, in the master end. Which end do you spend the most time in, and how often do you visit the other end? Now let's talk about the disaster end. Let's talk about really bringing to life what this looks like, feels like, sounds like. It's not just sleeping in separate beds or being unable to resolve an argument or going round and round in circles and then using something that doesn't help to cope with it, like shopping to feel better, or avoiding, or using your anger to defend, or getting stuck in that gridlock where you can't undo it. It's not just what disaster is. Disaster is also where one or both of you have a sense of look after me, validate me, make me feel like I'm the only person in the world, fix me. That is a disaster space, because do you know what the other end of that would be? This would be get to know me, learn me, see me, hold space for me, and allow all of me to live in our marriage. Do you see how different those two things are? Masterful is all about knowing me, but not being overly responsible for me. It's about experience all of me and don't conditionally love me, but it's not save me because I can't stand on my own 2 feet. That's in the disaster space. Yeah. So now let's talk more disastery space. This might resonate deeply with you, this next one. Are one or both of you chaotic? Are you unpredictable? Do you live in a roller coaster of emotions? Are you unable to determine whether today is a safe day or not? Or are you able to figure that out by walking on eggshells? Do you not know when the rug is going to be pulled out from under your feet? Do you wander around in a flurry of absent-mindedness? Or are you disconnected with a nose in a book and not really engaging in the state of your marriage or the state of your own life? Where do you fit in this chaos, this unpredictability, this roller coaster of emotions which live in the disaster space? Because a masterful marriage is steady, it's safe, it's consistent. It's where you both show up without question for what the other one needs. Feel the difference in that energy. Steady, safe, consistency, showing up for each other without question. Versus the disaster area, chaos, unpredictable, roller coaster. Yeah? Have a think about which one of those do you spend most of your time in as a couple. And I'm talking if you have 100% of a day, a week, a month, a year, what is your percentage that you spend in disaster versus master? All right, we're going to keep going with this because this is important as a conversation and as an assessment. Pull up in your mind the file of the movie that says, "You complete me." Do you remember that? Yes, I'm sure you do. That movie of "You complete me" is actually a disaster type statement. So not only because in that movie, the relationship was one where this boy had a crush on this girl and she was already in a relationship with his best friend. But so that already indicates that it's quite unhealthy and it's out of balance and it's probably in a fantasy kind of space, not a reality kind of space. But the idea that I am missing pieces and you have pieces that can fill those is not a masterful marriage. It's not a masterful relationship. That's a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen. That is not two people standing on their own 2 feet holding hands. That is two people leaning on each other. And when one person falls down, both people fall down. Okay? So have a think about how often are you looking for somebody to fill the gaps of you. Now, the other end of the scale, the dichotomy, right up this end, we have the masterful version of that. And this is you enhance who I already am. I already have my own identity. I love who I am. And being with you allows me to shine even brighter because you love me, you show up consistently for me without question, you hold space for all of me, the beautiful and the not so beautiful, because all of us have both. And you are doing that in a way that feels really good. Okay, next one. Have a think back to the disaster space again. Bring yourself back to that end. And I want you to think about this idea. The idea that you betray yourself and all of your needs in order to get love from your partner, or your partner has to do that for you, which means you go against what's okay for you, you downplay your needs, you minimize your value in order to get a version of love delivered to you. If that's happening in your marriage, that lives in the disaster space. Now, let's talk about masterful space and what the difference is. The difference is here is what we call personal responsibility, extreme responsibility, where each person's job in a marriage is to do the work first to meet your own needs. Ho ho, isn't that something? So instead of I betray myself and all of my needs in order to get your love, I do my own work first to get my needs met. I'm standing on my own 2 feet. I've got my hand out to you. We're holding hands, but I am me. And it's lovely being married to you. It's lovely being married to you. But also I meet my own needs first. I got myself. Now I've got one more example of this. And this is around your relationship and your marriage right now, and whether it mirrors anything to do with your childhood patterns. whether you're playing that out with your husband or whether there is a space in there that is very similar to the negative patterns you had in your own childhood, your family of origin. Maybe you had an angry dad, maybe you have an angry husband, maybe you have a complicit or non-responsible or quite avoidant mum, and now maybe you or your husband are avoidant now. Yes, so if you are in the disaster space, you're probably both of you are mirroring patterns that you experienced in your childhoods, and you're playing them through because that's what humans do who have had adverse childhood experiences. They play them out in their adult relationships, trying to make sense of them. Now, the antidote, or the opposite of this, up here in the marriage master space, is when your relationships are based in freedom, accountability, peace, where you are creating from a new space, a new life, rather than creating from an old pattern. And together you are creating a life that feels amazing. And so those are the two differences here. Now, all the way along here, I've asked you to look at where you fit on this dichotomy. Which end does your marriage mostly live on? Don't put in the middle, because that is no man's land. You want one or the other. Yes? And so one of the most important things here is for you to do the assessment without your brain trying to protect you and downplay anything that's not good, or try and trick you into not doing it at all. Fast forwarding over here, scrolling on through, clicking out of whichever modality you're listening to this on, Facebook Live or Spotify or YouTube. Whatever it is you're listening to, I want you to put aside those voices and allow yourself the gift of truly knowing where you are, truly knowing what that means, and truly giving yourself the freedom of an assessment. So I want you to think about all of that list of things we just talked about. Where do you sit in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, in 6 months? If you look back and you take a sample from any of those groupings of time, do you mostly sit in the disaster where you're saying, fix me, help me, save me, or your husband is, where you're both chaotic, you're unpredictable, there's this roller coaster of emotions in the marriage, where you're looking for someone to complete you, where you betray whatever you need for yourself in order to try and get a version of love from the other person? Or does your marriage, or from your perspective or from your partner's perspective, mirror the not very great patterns that you had as a child? All of that fits down in the disaster space, where your marriage is in crisis and help needs to come. Or are you up here in the masterful space, where most of the time the two of you have a culture of learn me, get to know me, hold space for all of me, allow all of me to live here, where you're that steady, safe, consistent person for each other, where you're showing up for each other without question, whenever you need to, whatever that person needs. Baby, I'm here for you. Where you have a sense of, I have got my own 2 feet firmly on the ground, and being with you enhances me. It feels even better to be with you, but I already have myself and I'm good. What about this one, where you have a sense of needing something emotional, something physical, and you do the work first to meet your own needs? Don't put the burden of that onto somebody else. And your overall relationship has this sense of freedom, accountability, of peace and connection and love and joy. Yes, where you're creating the life you want to live. You're kind of living life by design, creating the marriage of your dreams. And so this is the masterful space. And for many of you, this won't feel attainable. You won't have seen a model of how this works or how to do it in your life or your community. Maybe you've got a couple of people, but you think to yourself, oh my gosh, we're so far down in this disaster space. How am I going to get to the master space? It just feels like it's not going to happen. And so for you who are sitting in that disaster space for kind of 80% of the time, 60% of the time, 70, 90% of the time, anything kind of over 20% really, you're going to want to do the work to move yourself into the masterful space. Yeah? Because you don't want to live there. You don't want your kids to learn how to live in a marriage in that same kind of energy. You don't want to model that for them, but most of all, you don't want it for yourself. You don't want it for the love of your life, the person that you're with. And so I would encourage you very much to to commit. The commitment here is to moving into this space of a masterful marriage, because within a masterful marriage is a masterful life. And the best way for you to get the base level of skill set in here is to watch my masterclass. And so I'm going to put the link in for you so that you can watch that. That is the very best way. Okay? And so today is all about assessment. Is my relationship masterful? Or actually, is it pretty disasterful? And would I be happy if my daughter or my son had the same type of marriage as me? Would that make me feel happy? That's a really good question to ask. And if not, then it is up to you to start to be the change you want to see. It is up to you to put your superhero cape on and start to create the life that you want, because you can do that. You don't want a space where you're looking to be fixed, where it's chaotic, it's unpredictable, it's not consistent or safe. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're not looking to betray yourself in order to get your needs sort of met. You're not looking to recreate what you had in your own childhood in your marriage. What you're wanting to do is to create a marriage where the two of you want to learn about each other and accept all of each other. You want to be able to be steady and safe and consistent in your love, in your marriage, in the culture that you hold for your family. Yes, you want consistency. You want this sense of, you enhance who I am, but I'm good. I'm so good as a human. Both of you, imagine what it would feel like if both of you really felt like you were wonderful people, and being with your partner made it even better. I want you to think about doing the work to meet your own needs first, and whether that happens in your marriage. My guess is it doesn't. And I want you to think about what it would be like to live in a space of freedom, accountability, peace, connection, kindness, advocacy, where you could talk about anything and you both knew that you could have a different outcome. Yeah? Where you actually got to work it through and feel like you resolved it. This is what I'm talking about. All right, my loves. I've talked enough tonight, haven't I? So your job is to watch my masterclass. You want to know how to do it? This is going to tell you how to do it. So I want you to register for it, and I want you to watch it. And I'll see you soon. Much love to you. Bye, sweethearts. Thank you for tuning into today's show. If you're feeling fired up and you're ready to grow and you want to know more about how to do that, here is what I want you to do now. I want you to watch my marriage masterclass. This masterclass will show you how my clients have turned their struggling marriages into thriving marriages, even without their husband's buy-in. How my clients have gone from cycles of poor communication, disconnect and loneliness to being teammates and soulmates with their husbands again, even after they've already tried everything. And the proven system my clients use to start transforming their marriages in minutes, not years, because life is too precious to waste one more minute in an unhappy and unfulfilling marriage. So if this is what you're looking for, I want you to click the link below and take a look at my masterclass.